Hi, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Pie Before Dinner. This is Dr. Lou, your favorite mathematics mover and shaker, social guru, friendly neighborhood Spider Man, and all of that. Look, listen, I have with me a good friend, Caribbean colleague of mine, Dr. Stephen Kahn of Brock University in Ontario, Canada, right, Stephen? That's correct?
That's correct.
Now Stephen's from Trinidad, right? One of our friendly neighbors, Caribbean neighbors, Trinidad, and rivalries in soccer. Hey, do you know we beat you? Listen. I'm sorry. I know I'm going off topic here, but we beat Trinidad. Bermuda beat Trinidad. Do you remember that, Stephen?
Yeah.
Was it a World Cup qualifier or
Yep.
CONCACAF qualifier?
Um, I think it was World Cup, maybe.
Yeah. One of those times.
It
And
was bad.
we probably beat you several times, but one of those times we beat you in the soccer game, and that's a big deal coming from such a small Caribbean island nation. And I remember because I was at that game. It was in Bermuda. I think we beat you 2-1. A guy, John Barry Newsom, some of my Bermudian colleagues who are listening, Bermudian friends, John Barry Newsom, the ball was crossed from I think the left side, and John rose up and headed the ball down into the net, straight down into the net, towering over everyone, and we shouted and erupted, and that was a great day in Bermuda football history, man. We really we remember that, and so we got something for you, Trinidad, in case anybody is listening from Trinidad. But look, I'm happy to have you on the show today to talk about what you and I love to talk about, and that's mathematics. So tell us, how are you, and tell us where you're located right now. Well, what you're doing right now in Ontario, Canada.
Yeah. Well, I work in teacher ed mainly, and so I've just changed positions from University of Alberta
Mm-hmm.
to Brock University here in Southern Ontario, close to Niagara Falls. And just doing the professor thing, getting courses set up for the new year, taking care of my family. So,
Well, look,
all
that's
good.
awesome, man. And so we were backstage in my virtual studio back there, and we were talking. And so you've just gotten there, right? You had a big
Yeah.
you traveled there for what was the
5
distance?
days, 3,500 kilometers.
Wow,
Sorry, it's going to be in metric. Um,
wow.
5-year-old
Yeah,
uh,
yeah,
dog.
yeah.
It's a
So
good,
that's
a good trip.
a 5-year-old. So was that in a car or what? What were you
Yep.
in? Jeez.
So
Wow. But that's, I like road trips. That's a decent road trip though.
it was.
Did you get to stop at the falls and
We well, we
all sorts
we
of
saw the
things?
falls afterwards. After we got here, we went down one day, and with COVID-19, quite
Yeah.
quiet down there these days.
Yeah. Well, Canada is such a beautiful space. Um, it's so much to look at. My family. Well, I've told you this, but the audience, my family also lives in Canada as well. My stepmom lives in Bowmanville, Ontario. My father had moved there. He's passed now, but he moved there in the '70s. I spent many a time in Canada. Actually love Canada. Many a time traveling up and down the lakes in Canada and the various areas, provinces as well. So we greet you on behalf of our community Pie Before Dinner. Well, you're active. You're a member of the Pie Before
Yes.
Dinner community. So let's just welcome you as well. You know, I did something today on the show. I'm sorry, on our Facebook page. And if you are just coming into the space, ladies and gentlemen, you are listening to Pie Before Dinner live with Dr. Lou. You can reach us. We're broadcasting at piebeforedinner.com. We're broadcasting piebeforedinner.com/live. We're broadcasting at my own Facebook profile, Lou Matthews. We're also broadcasting at our Facebook group, the Pie Before Dinner Facebook group. And so we're happy to have you guys on with us. But what I was saying is that I was in the community today, Facebook community, and we were talking about. I was asking, well, where are people from? And I put up where people are from, and I'm surprised that, we're a Facebook group with a real powerful international following. I was talking to a lady from Botswana, from Haiti right now. So there are people who are looking and viewing this show. They can't view it live, obviously, because of the time difference, but we have folks from France as well, Nepal, India. looking at the show. And so we're as well as our staples are United States, Canada, Bermuda, other places in the Caribbean as well. So we're just happy for our international audience, indeed, right? And so we're so happy for the audience. And do me a favor, guys, if you're listening to this show, please just go right ahead and share this in your profile. Set up a watch party in your profile, a pod before dinner watch party. We really appreciate the love, appreciate you spreading, helping us to spread this message about pod before dinner. It's an inclusive mathematics inspiration community, no doubt. But we are also into sharing powerful images of black and brown people, period. And so that's part of what we do as well. Today, I'm also, if you can see this, can you see this, Stephen? I'm also wearing this shirt. Free. It should be free your math, and the rest will follow. You remember that song? What that came from?
Oh, who is that? Free your mind, and the
Free
rest
your
will fall.
mind, and the rest will follow. And so I created this shirt, free your math, and the rest will follow. Look, listen, audience, do me a favor if you're interested in getting the shirt. Just let me know, and I'll share a link out later on in the show. But I'll share a link out. We want to do this as a fundraiser. So you can go ahead and buy these shirts. We'll do it as a fundraiser. Fundraiser for what? Well, I had the thought of raising funds to send mathematics kits and materials to families. And so, if we could send mathematics materials and stuff to families so that they can do mathematics, um, that would be great. Yeah, Holly, free your mind and free your math, and the rest will follow, right? Um, and so yeah, so but that's what the show is about today. Free your math. And what I've enjoyed about my conversation with you, Stephen, online, because I met you online
Yeah.
first, and then we've subsequently connected. What I'm enjoying about my our interactions is your view of mathematics and how you're seeing mathematics. And so hopefully we'll definitely get to that in the show. And I did one thing in the show today. I said put a if you look at the comments, you'll actually see a part where you give us a snippet. And when I saw it, I said, "Why did we do that?" Because I didn't want people to give away the whole thing. But it's deep, right? I mean, it's a lot. It's deep. So if you want to scroll up and look at, thank you, like the shirt. If you want to scroll up and look up at what Dr. Khan has written earlier about what he thinks about mathematics, that's just a precursor, a forerunner of what's to come. But Stephen, let's talk about this. I like to talk to guests before they start, and you, I want to when we talk about your journey, I really want to go into this space. You grew up doing mathematics in the Caribbean, and so did I as well, right? And so what was it like growing up doing mathematics in the Caribbean? What are some of the powerful moments that come to mind as you reflect on what it was like doing math in the Caribbean?
Well, I mean, the powerful moments all relate to people, right?
Mm.
Uh, the one that I remember first up is my grandfather, my mother's father, who was uh, elementary school principal. And one Saturday, when I was visiting, showing me the property that when you add the digits in the multiples of nine, you always get nine, and that blew my mind because I'd never seen that in all my years in elementary school. Um, and so that was my real first taste of mathematics, of looking for patterns where they're um, in numbers.
Mm.
Um, Other sort of memories are not as positive, sort of doing mental math in the classroom and getting punished for not knowing you are not having the fact fluency at your fingertips. Uh,
Stephen, help me out, Stephen. Help me out,
sure.
because I don't know if our American friends understand some things. I have an inkling of something, and I just want to bring that to the forefront. When you say getting punished for not knowing, what was that like? What was
Getting
punishment in
punished
store?
entailed uh, getting whacked with a ruler or some other object on some part of your body. In this case, it was my hands.
Yeah, I thought that's what you were talking about.
Yep.
I thought that's what you were talking about. Our friends, our friends in the United States and all around the world may not be as familiar with what it
It,
meant to
that was 30
basically
years
having to
ago.
know your facts.
Yeah.
And you're right. I remember I had this seventh grade teacher, and if we'd have weekly spelling tests, and if you got more than three wrong, you were getting the strap. and it was a thick leather strap, and you were getting three whacks, and it was a phenomenal motivator. I mean, there was no talk of special services and education. I mean, it would not fly today, right? It wouldn't fly. I mean, I still think about that, right? And
Well,
it wouldn't
yeah,
fly today.
I do remember my fact. 8 by 7 is 56.
That's right. That's right. That's right.
But no
Never forgot
conceptual
that.
understanding. Just yeah.
But it's interesting. You talk about so your memories. It's a lot of a lot of rote stuff. You say.
Yeah, a lot of rote, not a whole lot of conceptual understanding in those early years.
Yeah.
Same thing moving into high school, a lot of just routine practice.
Okay.
I remember again sort of variations in math teachers in early high school, with some being more motivational, some being less motivational. The other sort of formative experience is somewhere when I was maybe 13 or 14. You know how boys are. Work was
Mm-hmm.
not the main thing on my mind, and had a sit down chat with my mom in the kitchen. Like, no, that's not good enough. I was just on the verge of failing math that year, and so she didn't bring out the strap or anything like that, but she said no, I can do better, and so I applied myself some more. Um, Later on, getting the opportunity to do to work on real problem solving. So Trinidad had become one of the, I think it's probably still the first Caribbean country to participate in the International Math Olympiad, and some of our senior teachers invited some of us in the lower grades. Hey, just saw us in the hallway. Do you want to try this problem? So real,
Now
no,
was that for everybody though? I mean, so
it
you
wasn't. That was the thing.
yeah.
At that time, it wasn't.
Mm,
It was sort of invitation. Later on, when by the time I became a teacher in the same school,
mm-hmm.
we opened it up to everybody, and we were able to say, okay, even if you, um, so there's some of the Canadian math competitions require a fee to participate. If you don't have the fee, we will cover it.
Mm, mm, mm.
And so that's how we got lots more kids participating in some of these problem solving competitions.
So so a couple things, right? So like you, I grew up with a. Let me just turn my computer part off. Like you, I grew up with a. I did very well in mathematics at a very early age, but there was so little math opportunity available even for me, and I was excelled in mathematics. But why is it? Do you see? Why is it that mathematics opportunity is not something that this idea that everybody can do mathematics, this idea that every child needs an opportunity to do rigorous, strong mathematics, this idea that I need to be surrounded by really great teachers and do really great problem solving. Is that an idea you see prevalent in throughout the Caribbean, or even more specifically throughout Trinidad?
Mm, No, and part of that I think is just the complexity of lives in the Caribbean as well.
Mm,
That there's this belief that your life is shaped by your circumstances, and so you need to get out of those circumstances first, rather than seeing mathematics as a route out. And I have a great colleague in Trinidad, Dr. Andrew Hunt, who
mm,
can speak to that at some point as well, in terms of doing math is a way out, is a way to provide opportunity, is a way to um, enrich your community, to bring something back to your community as well.
mm.
Um, the
Wait,
Yeah,
wait,
I
wait,
think
wait.
one as well. I mean, you're talking a recent history of colonialism as well.
Mm,
So Trinidad was granted independence in 1962, and so we're still in that really early phase of figuring out our identity, while still being in relation to the multinational corporations that have um, that still exist in the space.
mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Still in relation to the view from outside of the Caribbean as a tourist space,
Yeah.
a space to escape.
When my colleagues think about mathematics, we talk about the United States a lot, right? Because I'm based here in D.C. You're based in Ontario, in Canada, in St. Catharines, right? Is that right? Did you say St.
Yep.
Catherine? Right. When my colleagues talk about mathematics, they mention the United States, Canada, and the Asian countries. I rarely hear, if ever, hear my colleagues mention what it's like to do mathematics in the Caribbean, or what we want to do to improve mathematics in this region of 30 something countries. My question for you is, why are we so invisible to the people who are listening to this right now and the math community at large? Why are we so invisible as in mathematics text, in mathematics research, in mathematics commentary? Why do you think that is?
Well, so I mean, one of the possible answers is, I mean, even though we're a large geographic area, we're very small population wise,
Mm,
right? Just the density of the academic networks. Then we've got a lot of our um, very excellent mathematicians move on and live in and work in the United States or in the UK or in Europe. So we have those historical connections. Like I can think of a couple of really good mathematicians from Trinidad who work in the United States. I can think of a couple who work in the UK. So there's that aspect of it, and then they sort of get lumped within the metropolitan country. The
but why is it, do you think, that they're in these places? Because I can tell
well,
you, I
I
can
mean,
tell
one
you
one
one.
reason I think we're in the places are opportunities
Yeah.
for funding for doing interesting work that you might not be able to do in the Caribbean in terms of support, access to colleagues,
Yeah.
to have that those sorts of to have the conversations, the density of interactions that you need to do rich mathematics, to do um,
Mm. You know, one of
other
the
types. But I think of my colleagues in Trinidad as well, like what's his name? I forget his first name, Dr. Farrell, whose name adorns a well-known polynomial in graph theory, the Farrell polynomial.
mm-hmm.
Right. So that I mean I know that particular one, and there are a couple others.
Yeah, where did you learn? I mean, so let me ask you a question. Did you learn about these growing up?
Well, oh no, not
See,
in
see,
school. Only when I got to university and had a course with him.
see, now that gets me to this point, right? I never learned of. I was never taught of one Bermudian mathematician or mathematics educator.
Yeah.
I was never. They were never mentioned in any class that I ever took growing up in Bermuda doing mathematics. I had to look back as a scholar back in the field. I had to look back in the space and recreate a history that's almost a history that was just went unspoken. And I think one of the things that I hold with me that it pissed me off a lot actually is this idea of this violence towards intellectuals um, in colonial Caribbean, right? And I want to say colonial Caribbean. I think I think I live in a society. In my country where there's a violence towards intellectualism or sorry, homegrown intellectual property or space, right? Um, there's a I grew up where there was a reliance on a worship of foreigners and white people's knowledge and white people's contribution to stuff and white people's leadership, no matter how crappy it might have been. Someone's saying that my mic is low. Testing, testing. Is my mic low now?
A lot better.
Is that a lot better, everyone? Yeah, this mic system, man. I don't know what's happening. Let me try to. I'm just trying to do what I do. How's that, everybody? I hope it's better. All right, let me know, Marche. Let me know. Hope the mic is better. All right, so yeah, I grew up in a country. I think that exhibited a certain violence toward intellectuals, and if specifically in mathematics, mathematics was just totally invisible, but intellectuals in general. And I think I sometimes when I look at myself, Stephen, I don't know. I know you probably don't see this. Well, I'm curious. When I look at myself, part of my reason for being in the United States is a sort of exile too, right? I
Yeah.
mean, if I'm honest, I would love to do what I do in my own country, but part of it's just not possible given some of the mindsets that I've seen and the kind of violence that I've seen, the harm I've seen, uh, placed upon people like myself. What's your thoughts on that?
So I think one of the things we grew up with, and so if I had this conversation with a colleague who was visiting recently, V.S. Naipaul in his first collection, Miguel Street, he has this story about the pyrotechnist, this person doing science, doing exploring chemistry basically in his garage,
Uh huh.
and the way the street laughs at his experiments and is rooting for his failure. And so that's one of the things that we teach kids, or we taught kids for a long time, I think, that science was not for you math, and there was no math in that particular text. And there isn't a lot of mathematics in our literature or art that's explicitly brought forward
Yeah.
to kids.
Yeah. Yeah. You know what's interesting is that not only is math not for us, we've been taught that the plantation is right, or other areas of the workforce simply to maintain the economy.
Yeah.
And if we need mathematics, we'll bring it in. We'll import it. Bermuda's an import culture, but import country. So if we need the math, we'll bring it in versus to grow it within the space of our people. Yeah, yeah, that's a powerful thing. And so when I see scholars in mathematics from the diaspora, Caribbean diaspora spread abroad as such, I always wonder, are they in exile? Where's the space in their countries for the work? If mathematics is now this 21st century tool, then why aren't our countries creating the space for the work inside? Um, so
Again, I do
that's
know that there are organizations in the Caribbean that do
yeah,
that,
yeah,
that bring together the scientists, that bring together mathematicians and physicists to collaborate and
yeah,
to collaborate around the issues and problems that are rooted in the Caribbean experience and rooted in the Caribbean situation.
uh-huh, uh-huh,
Um, I think the issue again then goes back to funding and the geography of the region. The getting
yeah.
from place to place takes time. The
Yeah, yeah, no. So there's, at some point in our work, I really would love to just organize a summit where where mathematics folk in the Caribbean diaspora can get together. I think that would be really huge. Um, so let's go race, right? Let's talk about race, right? So we don't shy away from race in this and culture in this particular show. Do you see race playing a part of mathematics outcomes in the Caribbean and Trinidad and Bermuda? Is
in
that something
Trinidad,
that they talk about?
so so if you look at the statistics, then yes, in terms of you're going to see um, a distinct. Oh, you said not to bat in my crease, not to block. You're going to see more young black men who are not doing well academically
Mm,
at the time that they take exams. I mean, that's part of the issue too, right? The timing of these examinations and our whole culture that, oh, you've got to be able to take this at 11 years old, at
yeah, yeah.
16, and at 18, right? It's not something that follows the developmental trajectory that might be more suited to our Caribbean way of life.
Let's go back to that, right? Let's go back to that. I'm glad you opened that up. We in Bermuda we had this 11 plus exam, and um, developmentally misplaced, no doubt. But another barrier as well, right? Is that you can take this exam, and your entire life gets filtered out through this exam. At
Yeah.
11 years old, we were literally apportioning people into different professions, different tracks. And in Bermuda, growing up as a Bermudian male, our track was, you went to the academic school or to the school that was non-academic, or the trade, or even the trade schools. And so we created this false divide, and it only seemed to impact black people, to be quite honest with you, because white folks seemed to go to the private schools, and they didn't seem to have those. Um, they still don't seem to have that rigid division, right? When you go to the private schools, it seems to be this pronouncement that it's just quality indeed, right? But black people even in my country still struggle with this idea of he's academic, she's academic, or non-academic, and and non-academic. The phrase is you must be good with your hands, right? And I think it's such a sad state. It's such a violent way in which mathematics and the sciences and just the way is schooling is used to kind of like
So
divvy up.
we've eliminated any thought about what education is for, and it's just about schooling and finding a job in the future in most instances.
Yeah, yeah,
Through this particular lens, and you're right, it is an intellectual violence. It's a racialized violence. It's a gendered violence as
yeah,
well.
yeah, yeah.
And I
And
think
even disability, right? I mean, I grew up in a country where, again, in my own history of dealing with students with disabilities, we put them into another school, and they had drastically reduced expectations and resources for learning, right? I mean, we're not in that space anymore, but we're still not in a space where we can see we can disable disability. And I hope to have another guest on here one day to talk about how Catherine Ye. I'm still waiting for her to come on at some point, but she talks about treating disability like a cultural. If we treated disability like we treated culture, right, and made ourselves more responsive to disability, that would be a phenomenal space. Not just some ingrained thing that can't change, but it's us who can change. Our response to the space can change. So look, speaking of you know, so we grew up in these spaces where mathematics took on very gendered um, connotations, racial connotations in opportunity and access, and yet we're here. We're here, right? And you and I pushing the boundaries of what we think math is. And so I want to ask the audience, by way of them listening, if you're listening to this now, or even if you listen to this later after the live show, we'll be sure to respond in kind. But I'm asking you, when you think of mathematics, when you hear the word "what is mathematics," what comes to mind? Audience, go ahead and address that question, and just answer that question in the chat if you like. But when you think of mathematics, what comes to mind? And so, Stephen, you think about that as well. Dr. Khan, you think of that as well, and then I'll ask you to respond in kind. And I want to get this engine running around our ideas about what mathematics could be. But when you think of mathematics, audience members, folks, what comes to mind? What did you experience? What is mathematics? What's your answer to that? Just go ahead and put some answers in the chat. All right, so Stephen, as they're going ahead and as they're putting stuff in the chat, I trust that people are putting this in the chat. Holly says thinking and puzzles. And so let me ask you, Holly, let me push on that. What was your what definition of mathematics did you learn? So when you think back and look at your high school and your primary or elementary school experience, what did you think what did you learn mathematics was? Yeah. Problem solved. Was that, I'm sorry, in between my questions, was that what it was or what it was? Terry, a fellow Bermudian as well, based here now in, Dr. Terry, based here now in Baltimore. Math exclusive club for those who have access to money, tutors, and high expectations. Yeah, I mean, are you saying that's the past, or is that still, that still sounds pretty right to me. But Terry, I'm curious, what did our teachers teach us about math? Stephen, what did you grow up learning math
so.
as?
I think elementary school math was sums, and I'm sure that word resonates across the Caribbean. So just doing the same things over and over and getting faster at it.
Yeah.
So rote memorization,
Yes.
set procedures. In early high school, it was harder sums. So a little bit of moving from the linear to the nonlinear stuff and factorization type stuff. And then I said there was this moment around the mid-teenage years where the idea that math is more than that and could be, that you didn't know what the answer is. You had to spend more than a few minutes on a problem. You had to spend a week or 2 weeks on one problem. Um,
Where was
began to
that?
take o-
Was it, you said that was high school?
That was about, yeah, um, around age 15. So
Wow.
whatever grade, that'll be
Yeah.
what, grade 9?
Yeah. So I hear the what the audience is saying around numbers and formulas in that order, right? And then the problem solving later. See how the problem solving gets is the latter of the space. And when someone talks about rote memorization and memorizing formulas and procedures, it's interesting because I have a couple of things to say about this. One is that you have to wait so long just to get into to a kind of view of math that involves problem solving and deepness, right?
And play, just space to play.
Yeah, yeah. You said it's a place to play.
Yeah. I mean, I go back to the example of my grandfather showing, which is, oh, this is a neat pattern. Are there other places? Are there other patterns in the multiplication tables that we were learning by rote?
Yeah,
So
yeah,
just that pointing to something.
yeah. You know, it's. I'm curious as to, and so you and I talked earlier, and I want to go back just if I can jump back to the Caribbean. Is that I feel like we're being left behind in a certain math reform conversation and movement. That's my biggest fear. Um, that our views about mathematics learning are getting either invisibilized or left behind in the space. When I come here, being in the United States and looking at math in other places as well, I see this specifically along racial lines as well for black children. This access to memorize and this access to procedures, access to basic skills. There's much more access to that than there is to deep mathematics, playful mathematics, enjoyable mathematics, right? Um, and so, why do you think that is? Terry says there was little joy.
Yeah.
Terry, you summed it up. Math was rote learning and something you had to excel at if you wanted to stay in the A group. And people made it very clear in the A group. Even if you were in the, Stephen, in my country, even if you were in the A school, there was the A group. So I remember my first teaching job at the academic school. People were saying, I'm in the dumb class. Like, what? But you're in you're in the A school. They developed this identity of not doing the A work, the A mathematics, right? And there certainly wasn't joy in it. And Terry points out there was little joy.
Yeah.
Well, sorry, Stephen, you were going to say?
No, it's the lack of joy is definitely one of the things I think in mathematics in the Caribbean. In terms of the question, I'm trying to get back to the question you asked a second ago.
I don't remember. Hey, I'm just betting. I'm just betting freely right now, man. This is our audience doesn't know, but I'm using cricket terms right now. I'm betting freely. This is 2020 right now, man. I'm just betting freely with the new ball, man. Just betting. so, so yeah,
I
we can
like to
come
use
back.
cricket
We
analogies in classrooms here too sometimes.
we can certainly come back to it. Hey, listen, Monique brings up a point. I just have Monique Anderson. Hello, Monique. On the screen here. For me, it was fun mental gymnastics. But she says something interesting. I have to give partial credit to a passionate mathematics junior high school teacher, and so it's so. Do you have any of those people in your life, in your space, in your journey?
Definitely. The late high school, the last couple of years, I had three excellent math educators in a row.
Mm,
The one I had at 16 we were doing lots of calculus type work, but not routine. We were understanding it conceptually.
yeah,
Same thing when we moved into sixth form for the last 2 years of high school. Some of the work it was always conceptual at that point. It was no longer rote, and the problems were more interesting, even though they were still oriented towards a large part towards external examinations.
yeah. You know, you know. You said three consecutive high school teachers, right, in
Yeah,
high school. Well, we know, and parents, this is for you. We know that just 2 years of a consecutive good teaching can
yeah,
erase just about any gap in mathematics, right? Sorry, there's no math gene, there's no magic formula. There's just listen. If you expose children to high quality mathematics teaching and learning, That's how you free your math, right? That's gonna erase some of the gaps, and it's no coincidence that people like Monique and like myself can point to people, math teachers, really great math people, math teachers who adults who gave them opportunities and it really exposed them to some powerful stuff. So so guess what? Let's transition a bit, just even ever so slightly. Let's keep pushing the
Yeah.
conversation. So from rote learning, from drill and kill, from the times tables, right? From getting the strap. If you missed the show, we were talking about getting the strap, getting strapped if we didn't get our timetables or our spelling right. And so, from all of that to doing more sums and problem solving, you and I have evolved into a space, right? Uh, we've evolved to some new ideas, some different ideas about mathematics, and they're not well, I wouldn't say they're as new or even as popular, but certainly people don't talk about these ideas. So you've talked to me about this idea of mathematics. Where's your head at when it comes to this? The answer to this question: what is math? Where are you now?
So so first I usually go, I stop thinking about what math is and that's what is math for. So the
Ooh,
relational aspect.
oh, come on,
And sort
come
of put
on.
the math is sort of the definitional aspect second
Mm,
for me. And so
mm,
when I think of what is math for and where
mm,
does it come from, I mean, I'm very much influenced by the work of Ubi D'Ambrosio and Bob Moses and others that looks to the cultural aspects of
mm-hmm,
mathematics first, as it's
mm,
something that comes out of a particular culture. And we've been talking about that, right? The strap is part of the culture that we grew up in. And so that's part of the mathematics as well, a mathematics of violence and of root.
mm,
But the place I've gotten to in the last couple of years is thinking about mathematics for multi-species flourishing. That, in this context where we are facing um, climate chaos, climate breakdown, that to do mathematics abstractly is a real privilege and perhaps not the thing that is most important for most people. Um, that we won't be able to do that mathematics if we don't have a place that supports life. And the same way that many of us haven't been able to, many of our relations in terms of our family or our country folk have not been able to pursue their own flourishing because of the inability to access, to get over the math hurdle, the math gatekeeper.
hey, Stephen, let's break that down some more because I think we're introducing some terms. We're introducing some terms that people are
Sure.
not that you and I hear all the time. I mean, so I just want to unpack it a bit more. You
Yeah.
said flourishing. What do you when you say flourishing, and what do you mean by that? And even multi species,
Well,
because people don't hear that term with mathematics.
no, not they don't. So when we think about flourishing, I mean, you're thinking about what does it take to live a good life? What does it take to be satisfied in this life? Um, and when I think about flourishing, very generally, not just for human beings, but for um, all species on the planet, I think about, well, we have these basic needs, needs for survival. But these are, I want to, we have this need for making things, right? For looking beyond ourselves. So whether it's in religion or in art, so
Mm-hmm.
this need for transcendence, something beyond ourselves to belong to something bigger.
Yeah.
But pie before dinner, for example, we have this need to belong to community.
Come on, man.
Right?
Come on now. Come on, Stephen. Come on. Now you're betting. Now you're betting, Stephen. Come on. Come
We
on.
have this need to, right, to have our dignity as a human being, or in case of other species, recognized and valued. And within all of this space, as organisms on this planet, we face challenges. We have just the
Mm,
challenge of continuing to exist, the challenge of
mm,
uh, all of those things: surviving, transcending, belonging, and um, expressing our dignity
mm.
as human beings or as other species. So that's when I think of flourishing. That's what I think about.
Let me go to, and I know you said a lot, and I know I'm just taking our piece, but
Yeah.
bear with me because this is really great. You said something, and I just wrote something up to the audience. is your mathematics audience, is your mathematics helping you to flourish? Like,
And so that's the main question.
like, but Stephen, think about that for a second. If I don't have an issue thinking about art like that, like I only keep art in my. Well, you see my art. I have an art picture there, right? A young lady in a coffee shop in D.C. Okay, right there, yeah. Drew that for me, right? And so it had a story to it, right? And I said, I want to just a powerful. I want you're an artist, you're a young artist. Hey, just do something for me. I want a powerful image for my house, right? On the cheap, right? So she drew that, and so like art has this story and has this meaning. I don't put art in my house that doesn't help me to to enjoy, to flourish. I think about my life. I think about the space, right? When I think about music, I'm playing some Bob Marley or some Lauryn Hill or you know, um, I think about music and how it makes me flourish, right? And how I flourish. I don't know if we even think about mathematics. If we're even programmed or trained or influenced to think about math like that, in the sense of flourishing. It's something we do to get by, to stay in the A group, to get a job. But are you flourishing with this thing called math? And why are you continuing to experience math or allow your children to experience something and not think about how they flourish as they do it?
And once you open the flourishing Pandora's box, what happens is you realize, well, my flourishing is tied up with everyone else's, with everything else's,
Mm,
right? So
mm, mm.
the the case that I've just been working on with some students at U of A, Hang and Stephanie, we looked at Hang's practice of making Vietnamese New Year rice cakes, banh chong,
Making
and
what?
So at
Oh,
the New Year,
yeah.
they make a rice cake. And so we took that and we thought about it really deeply through this lens of multi-species flourishing, looking at, well, what's involved, right? What's involved in the making, the collecting the rice, the beans, the meat, the leaves, the bamboo, the wooden molds. And then we talked about,
Is
the
that called
process.
Neon Gao or something like? What is that?
Banchong
Uh,
is
is
my
that
best
is that
current,
Chinese?
is Vietnamese.
Vietnamese. Ah, okay, okay, okay.
And so
All right,
really
sorry.
looking at how this practice and the mathematics around that's not evident, it's not something that we would talk about or think about, contributes to the continuation of her culture in Canada,
Mm.
connects her to her communities both at home and in Canada. That is related to this idea of transcendence of honoring the ancestors and being in relation to the living world. That there's that dignity in engaging with her kids. So the
Mm-hmm.
square one,
Ah, that
yeah.
looks good, man. And listen, this is a pie before dinner show, and people will know that I am partial to the food, man. So we're gonna take a look at that. Yeah, this idea of just yeah, that's some good looking rice cake though. All right, sorry. Go ahead, man.
So it's beginning to tease out. Oh, there's mathematics in this practice, but it's this practice is for more than just the mathematics. So it's not, oh, I'm just going to bring this practice in. I'm just going to do this next week, but really digging into and understanding. Well, what's involved? What are all of the different species that are involved here?
Mm-hmm.
What is our responsibility to the rice farmers? Where are these beans coming from? Where's the meat coming from? Um, right? Things like that in that discussion. And then there is definite challenge in making these cakes. I have not done it yet, but I look forward to 1 year with Han to do that. So maybe at the next New Year, if we get a chance to do it together.
Yeah, I was just looking up something as you were talking about. I saw this problem that a typical math problem. So this is so you're talking about an opportunity to talk about how we experience the new year, and as thinking about the Vietnamese New Year and rice cakes, building rice cakes is a part of that. and how my mathematics becomes a part of that. In fact, I have blurred the line between mathematics and the culture. So I have blurred, for me, it's the doing that is the math. I'll give an example. So when I watch, I don't know who your football team is. You look like a Barcelona versus. I don't know if you follow Juventus or
I haven't followed in a while. I used to be more a Bayern fan.
Okay. Okay. Well, no. So if you follow Barcelona and Messi, right, considered
Yep.
arguably, well, I didn't even know if it was arguable anymore. One of the greatest players, right, that we've certainly in the last 20 years or so. Um, when if you go to a football game and you see people playing football and you watch the build up, so you're in the audience, right? And so you watch the build up. You watch it it's at the back in your half, and there's a build up. There's a guy touching the ball and they're kicking and they're passing, and the crowd starts to make some noise, yeah. And the team strings together two or three passes together, and they make noise, and yeah, and the crowd gets louder and louder, and the ball moves down the sideline as the players are advancing, and as they get closer to goal, they get louder and louder and louder. And I've been to England. I've been to an Arsenal game. Arsenal's my team too. I've been to an Arsenal game. By the way, Arsenal beat Liverpool today 2-1. I just think that's significant. That's a big turning point, guys. Let's stick in there. But I've been to this game, and so I've been to an Arsenal game, and similar to like a Barcelona game, closer the ball gets to the goal and the build up, the crowd starts to rise, and the emotion of the crowd and its experience, and then everyone's standing up at some point. You have to stand up just to see it. And then there's a goal, and there's a crescendo and a loud and wah, and everybody's singing. And you watch the build up, the crescendo of the experience, and you realize that playing football was not about the goal. It was about the entire experience of living and flourishing in the moment, right? And so even when we play football at home, um, in the backyard and in the neighborhood parking lots on Porn Hill and St. Augustine's Hill in Bermuda, we would say, "Yo, that's touches." We would call it touches. It's not just to score and win, but you got to play with some touches, man. That's got to be pretty. That's got to be nice touches. Spread the ball around, make that good pass. And that was ball. That was football. Football was the experience. Football was the totality of the experience. We say that with art as well, right? We say that with music. You listen to music. It's not just the song, man. It's the goosebumps you get. It's the vibe you get listening to the music. It's the ambiance of the candles. It's the whole space of flourishing in the music. We don't think like that in math, but we can. What if we consider
Yeah.
math an experience, a movement, not just some, not just some information, but a movement? That's good math, man. That's good math.
That is, well, that's exactly what I want from my pre-service and in-service teachers, just for them to begin to think about crafting an experience for students to flourish along with them. Because when students flourish, teachers flourish. When teachers flourish, students flourish, I think.
Yeah.
And then students.
Yeah, that's a good point. We had a good colleague friend of mine, Dr. Brian Williams, on, and he talked about. I had labeled this show, "Finding Joy in Your Math," but by the time we finished, we had turned the title around to "Finding the Math in
Math
Your
and
Joy."
joy.
In your joy, you know, and maybe we need to flip this script around, right? So look, let's pivot real quick. So now there's Black Lives Matter and COVID-19. How is this impacting what you're thinking about math? What's the way forward now with mathematics and our learning?
That's a tough question there, Lee. Let me not go too much on the defense. So I think we do need to slow down at times and think about what mathematics we're offering. I'm looking, for me, I look at it through this lens. So whatever we offer has to be challenging. So none of this sums that you can be done with in 30 seconds, and that means you're good at math. Yes, we need some of those. That's the confidence, but that's not math. Really thinking about what are the challenges that different communities in their particular locations are facing. So those needs for survival. What are the things that people need to survive?
Mm-hmm.
the transcendence? What are those spaces of joy? Those spaces of belonging to something bigger than themselves, whether it's through church or it's through community group or it's through activism, and then seeding the mathematics in there, figuring
Mm.
out what mathematics we need in there. Where are people's dignity being erased or not
Yeah.
acknowledged at all? I think so across the
Ooh,
Black
boy.
Lives Matter and the response to COVID-19 in some places, we see that, at the front. That's the place where we need to think about how we bring mathematics. How do we bring mathematics to
Man, man.
respond to the violations of human dignity? Um, the need for belonging. Who is currently outside, sitting outside, and needing to be invited into the conversation?
Mm.
And how do we not do that in a way that makes those outside feel that they're lesser?
I'm going to share something, a cheap share from my Twitter account. um, and so you'll see my Twitter account. And if you're listening, a cheap plug, you can follow me on Twitter at Lou Matthews Live. At Lou Matthews Live on Twitter. But I posted something on Twitter some time ago, it was October 29th, 2018, and I don't know why, but I'm just gonna blow it up a little bit so educators can see this because I think this is something really important to think about. And the question is, what if teachers? I was thinking about Bloom's taxonomy, and I was like, Bloom's taxonomy doesn't help me love people. You know, Bloom's taxonomy doesn't help me think about loving my community and loving black children and loving brown children and loving everyone. It doesn't help me think about that, right? It doesn't help me. You said something just now that made me really pause. It made it really easy. We can make this, we can change our math really easily by just asking ourselves, what do people need to flourish, right? What do and COVID-19 is the pandemic is begging this question. What do people need to flourish,
And
right?
then when people answer that question, listening and following through on what they said, this is what I need to flourish.
Yeah. And
And
building
that's,
our math around that, right?
yeah.
But it's a simple question. So, I mean, so many people are thinking about culturally relevant teaching, culturally responsive teaching, social justice in mathematics, and we're making it a very difficult, a very, and of course, there's a big base of research and scholars around the space, yeah, our company included. But it's simple as well, right? Like, what do people need to flourish? Connect and listen. And in your answer, now let's do math. Let's do math around the hopes of of assisting in solidarity with that flourishing, right? What do you all think? What do you all think? What we're talking about? Just play some stuff in the comments. I had some trouble with the mic earlier, but I'm hoping my mic is not low. Just let me know if it's okay, guys. Listen, you are listening to piebeforedinner.com. This is the Pie Before Dinner live show with Dr. Lou. We are broadcasting. Actually, we're broadcasting on YouTube as well. We're broadcasting to YouTube. We're broadcasting to the Pie Before Dinner group. We're also broadcasting to my own profile and the Inspire Math page. And so, just this question I asked, what if educators, what if teachers use verbs um, that got to flourishing, that got to this critical consciousness, like restore and reinvigorate, inspire. Imagine teachers, if you're looking, what if you were to create an instructional lesson, right? An instructional goal with the word nurture in it, or with the word protest, or with the word dismantle, disrupt. You've probably never seen a lesson plan. I know you haven't seen a standard like that. Well, certainly not in mathematics. But what if you saw a lesson plan that said invest, but not invest in a way that could help us build wealth or care for or nurture or love? What would that even look like? And I challenge on my Twitter page, challenge us as educators, myself included. Students will, and let's try to shake that up. I want to show you something else too. I want to get your take on it since I have you here, Stephen, Dr. Stephen. Uh, something that I saw on my Twitter account as well, right? And so you'll see me spend a lot of time on Twitter. Is a great place to talk to other people in education and mathematics around the world. But Someone was introducing us to this new math app called Math and Smart Pirates, right? I don't know if you've seen it or heard about it, but if you look at a lot of these apps, and so I wrote something here on the app. I wrote something here. I hope people can see it. Um, why is it so much easier? And I'm posing this question to you, Dr. Stephen Kahn, Brock University. If you're joining us late, I'm posing that question to you. Why is it so easy to envision mathematics with regards to fantasy and pirates and spaceships and castle, but not in the sense of flourishing?
Well, so I mean, I've thought a bit about this in my earlier work was on math popularization, and so one of the things here is around how we've constructed the idea of the young child. And so the young child is very much envisioned through the lens of the white European
Yeah.
child. And sort of their um, grounding narratives around the role of pirates and exploration. So,
Whoa.
right,
Whoa. 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 Wait. Slow. Come on, Doc. Slow down. That was tight, Doc. Audience, and I have another take on that, but I wanna get back at yours. Can you just go say that part again? I don't want the audience to miss that part. That's
well,
I something
again,
I
so
hadn't
we
thought
think
about.
about society. Societies have sort of grounding narratives, and we introduce those to kids through the stories that we tell them. So the European we call them folk tales and fairy that we learn as fairy tales, for example. And so in the modern world, we do the same thing through these apps. And so we're using some of those grounding narratives as well. So if you look for apps specifically developed by members of minority groups, you see very different narratives. So, for example, here in Canada, some of the apps and games developed by Indigenous First Nations, Métis, and Indigenous Inuit uh, creators are very different.
Wow, that's a
Very
study. Listen, that's a study there, man. That's a
and
study.
there and if you look, there's some really good apps in that vein, not math, but games developed by these developers on the iPad already
Yeah,
or on Android.
you'll have to link me to some of that, Stephen. I have not.
I'll find some
I would
for you.
love to. When you get time, just come. When you get time, come back on the
On
chat
Facebook.
here in the Facebook page. Come back on the chat and just kind of put some
Maybe
apps in there because that's interesting. You get a difference. But look, I'm gonna go. I thought you was gonna go somewhere else. I'm gonna go here. So someone questioned me, right? Someone asked me to why this was such an issue, and I said, so I followed up, actually followed up, and I'm trying to let me just find the follow up on the because I made a comment, and so let me follow up. Let me see where I followed up. Da 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 da. So because someone actually challenged me on this her particular space, and my response to this, Stephen, was that um, these are spaces that typically feature white men, right? Like think of the swashbuckling pirate. Think of the astronaut. Think of the knight, the knight in shining armor. They feature also. They're driven by images of white men too, right? White heroes in the space, or even anti-heroes if you think of pirates, depending on how you think of pirates. But you're right. Even in following that exploration and that's a conquest model, right?
yeah.
That's this conquest model, this colonial model. But the kicker is, we have parents on this call. We have parents listening. We have parents in my communities that this is all we have sometimes, and we're not. We haven't questioned this space enough, and we haven't questioned the makers of these spaces enough. Some are. I mean, you got some great people in the space. I know we had the CEO of Zorbits on the program. And I know that that's a direction that they're really going to be pushing into, right? So you have people who are awakening to this space, but it's because of the Black Lives Matter space, right? And asking different questions about what it means for groups of people to flourish in around the world, flourish uh, against the backdrop of violence.
Yeah. So again, part of it is when you look at who the normative or the imagined audience is for these apps and games, who has sort of the disposable income to spend on apps or games or time. And then that is not always rich mathematics in there as well.
Yeah, that's true. That's true.
So I will definitely find some of those for you and put them in the chat later on, Lou.
Yeah, I appreciate that. You can see one of our audience members has asked
Yeah.
that. Um, can you name some apps created by people of color? I can't. That's why I'm asking myself.
I
And
have
the
my
thing is,
file. I just have to go open the file and pull them up after
and
this.
here's the kicker: I'm in math and I can't name it right offhand. You know, I can name a host of them that haven't been. So you know that's a part. But okay, so that's another issue, right? That's a part of. I was gonna call. So this chart is called free math, right? Free your math. Part of freeing your math is getting access to mathematics resources that reflect our worldviews, right? That help us to flourish. We can free our math by finding ways to flourish. One of the ways we can free our math is to challenge the space around who's creating the resources, and so that's one area as well. So I came across this next thing, Stephen. You can see this one on the screen. Um, it was a problem I found on Twitter as well. There are 26 kids at the beach. There are 37 more kids come. How many kids at the beach now? And a student responds, too many for COVID-19. What's your thoughts on that? It's it's tongue in cheek, funny in a sense, but then it's I had to post it and speak to
Yeah.
it. But what's your thoughts on it?
I think it's a nice prompt to use with kids as well. I mean, one of the kids are very much worried about what's happening with COVID-19. This is very, very atypical. I've just figured out today that my daughter, for example, has not interacted with a kid her own age in the last month,
They
right?
haven't
And so,
interacted
what
with what?
a kid her own age,
Wow.
right? I mean, some of it's longer as well, but just as we've moved. And so there's too many for COVID-19, I think, is expressing an anxiety as well as an awareness of the situation that we need stress. It's so if it is an expression of anxiety, then we have to think about how are we addressing that aspect for these kids to flourish now and in the future.
Yeah. It's also what's interesting, I find interesting, Stephen, is that it's so easy to have this conversation about a math problem. It's pretty ridiculous to talk about kids at the beach in without this talking about this context. That one, we can't even go to the beach in some places right now, and 26 kids at a beach, and 37 more kids at a beach. Given some of these lockdown spaces that these restricted spaces we find ourselves in is problematic. So we're not even using the mathematics to think through a problem. It's like we want kids to think about a problem, but not think about the problem. And
Yeah.
so this is a student speaking up. And so imagine if the adults actually spoke up in this space, right?
Well,
That could be really powerful.
I look at this, there are 26 kids at the beach, and I substitute beach in my mind for in an ICE detention center.
Yeah. Yeah. Whoa. Whoa.
In terms of
Whoa. That's powerful too. Yeah.
there's
Yeah. Yeah.
what
So,
are we
so
pointing attention to?
yeah. What are we paying attention to? Good point. So, Stephen, your Twitter account, I just put it on. Is TeachCon Math? Is that it?
No, KHA at Can Teach Math.
Oh, I like that. I see. That's a take on that. You know,
Yeah,
my brother's name is Khan.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, yeah. I have a brother named Khan. Lives in Bermuda, and so that's at Khan Teach Math. Okay, can teach math. Hey,
Yeah.
it depends on how you read it. Can't each. So yeah, we won't get into that. But listen, Stephen. So that's a really powerful thing. You've helped us think tonight about flourishing, right? This idea. We take some time to get to it, and we like to grow like that. But you've left us with this space of flourishing and challenge our math to ask the question: what will it take for you to flourish, for people to flourish, and then place the mathematics in the flourishing, right? Or to help us even get there, right? To help us get towards a flourishing. So we appreciate you, Dr. Stephen Kahn, Professor of Mathematics Education at Brock University. You are listening to Pie Before Dinner at piebeforedinner.com/live. listen, you can continue to write in the comments if you're watching this show live, or we know we have some international viewers who watch this show post live. Please leave your comments and we'll come back to them. Dr. Khan is going to get us some information about those apps, those indigenous
Yeah.
apps. And so you've given us something to push on, right? To find the flourishing, find how to help people to flourish, and to think very differently about how we can view math, how it can
Yeah.
be.
I mean, part of it, we've always thought of math as the solution to lots of problems,
Whoa.
and it's a way of
Wow.
getting at some of those. But another way is just to ask people, what do you need, to really think about those things first, and then to bring the math to that, to address those particular problems, to
Mm, mm,
think about,
mm,
where where are the places, the way I frame it, what are the things that are flourishing, limiting, and addressing those, and then there's some that are more anti-flourishing, and so those are much bigger issues, right?
yeah,
There
yeah,
you're talking about things
yeah.
like
And
genocide.
hey, you know what? Let me back up. And that's a what you've said there. When you say anti-flourishing, I consider anti-racism,
Yeah,
and what I want people to get at is that when you think about anti-racism and justice, it that's not the same necessarily as flourishing. I mean, there's there's a way you can attack justice, get at justice, and still not have a come at it from a love for others and a real genuine investment in their flourishing. To me, that's a bigger space through
yeah.
which justice helps us to get to that space as well. Listen, you've been listening to Pie Before Dinner. I want to thank you, Stephen, on behalf of the Pie Before Dinner group. We've run out of time. We've actually run a little bit over, as we always do. We start 7:30-ish and run over-ish. But we really appreciate you. Thank you for coming. Would you come on? Would you come on again sometime if you can find
Certainly, certainly.
another good topic?
Yep.
We appreciate you. You are doing great
Thank
things
you.
in over there in Ontario, Canada. We know that you have great love for your country of Trinidad, and you're still pushing the envelope. You're challenging us globally, but with love in those communities that you're a part of. We wish you and your wife and your family Godspeed in this space, and as we all think about this multi-species way of flourishing in and through our mathematics and our community. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for being such a great audience. You can go to piebeforedinner.com/live or our Facebook group, Pie Before Dinner. Please join our Facebook group. Please spread this message, spread our group, share it to your page. We love you and we appreciate you. Until next time, drop us a comment, a note in the comment. Tell us how much you enjoyed the show. Tell Dr. Khan, you can tell me if you like as well, but tell us what you thought about the show and maybe suggest some topics as well. Look forward to seeing you. Peace out, everyone. Thank you much.